We're going to look at 10 impact wide receivers for Dynasty Fantasy Football. We're going to look at their ADP. We're going to look at their market value. We're going to look at the advanced metrics, see whether you need to buy, sell, hold, trade, or just set them on fire. We're going to do that all here today, but before we do, you need to click that subscribe button right now. I'm helping you build your Dynasty teams. We're going by player, rookie by rookie, trade by trade. It's all here right on this channel. Click that button, stop missing out. But we're going to talk about our first wide receiver today. A big name. We're talking about older guys here in a sweet spot of the ADP. The guy we're looking at here first is Terry McLaurin. Wide receiver 39. ADP of 69. 69 off the board. It's interesting here because quarterback play has been pretty bad. Pretty bad. Jaden Daniels coming in. He can throw the deep ball. He's accurate downfield. Has a live arm. 7.6 targets per game last year. 21% target share. If we can get over 100 air yards per game, we might have something. Definitely be pushing around a 40% air share. That might be happening as well. He's got an 87% route participation rate. He's still got the goods. He can still break off routes. He still has the speed. The thing is, his contract is saying, hey, not for long with the Commanders. His age is saying, hey, you better watch out. I like him, or I think he's okay. That's probably the best word for it, for win now teams. If I'm looking at my roster right now in July 4th, and I'm looking at it and say, hey, I feel like I can win some money, Terry McLaurin's fine. If I feel like it's going to be a couple years before I can even contend, Terry McLaurin's not fine. And if so, you need to kick the tires to see what you can get out of him. On top of that, if I'm a win now team, I'm looking for a speculative play for the short term that could help me out here. A pretty discounted wide receiver if things hit at 69 overall, wide receiver 39, so I want him cheaper than that. I'd be trying to get him at like wide receiver 45-ish price tag. More than likely not going to happen, but you got to try. That's why we call it kicking the tires. We're also seeing his ADP starting to go up a tiny bit, a small bit if you look at the chart below me. Last year wasn't horrible, 12 points per game. One wide receiver 1 week, so only won you 1 week out of the year, but his down games were not too bad, and we're in double digits a lot of last year. So if Jaden Daniels hits, if you like Jaden Daniels, if you feel good about Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin might be a buy for you. I'd be looking at the long term here, questioning that, especially with the contract, but he'll probably get a bag, maybe, or he moves on and goes somewhere else. But Amari Cooper, wide receiver 40, 70 ADP, 8.5 targets per game, 23.6% target share, 121 air yards a game last year, almost a 40% share of the air yards. Runs a lot of routes, 14.2 average depth of target. So we're looking good. We're looking good. They brought in Jerry Jeudy. He's going to be playing on the opposite side of him. We got Elijah Moore in the slot. When Amari Cooper's healthy, he's rocking. He's rocking big-time numbers, 15.1 points per game. He's older. His contract's not for long with the Browns. Will they re-sign him? I don't know. How much longer will he be in the league? The same answers with Amari Cooper here. I like him for win-now teams. I like him if I feel like I'm in the money. I don't like him if I feel like I got to build. I don't like him if I know it's going to be 2026 before I'm competing. Hopefully it's sooner, but we know how builds can be. We know how some leagues can be when it comes to moving players around. On top of that, when he's on the field, he's very hit or miss. He can have some low points. He can also have some high points, but a very good wide receiver getting a good workload, over 20% target share, over 100 air yards per game. The question is with Deshaun Watson. If he steps it up, Amari Cooper's going to step it up. If he steps it up, this team steps it up. It's a faster paced offense if he steps it up. If it's what we've been seeing, injuries, not looking good, the reason why the Browns keep bringing in all these quarterbacks, then Amari Cooper might be more like this throughout the year. Something you may not want at wide receiver 40 when you're looking at an older wide receiver on your team. But again, win now, it's okay. It's okay. It's not grandiose or anything. I'd be trying to get him a little cheaper than what he is, but that's it. If I'm not in it to win it, I'm not in it for Cooper. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 49, ADP of 75. Similar tale here. Good on the down weeks. Down weeks aren't horrible. His up weeks will win you some weeks. He'll win you some games. 7.8 targets per game, 23% target share, 8 out of 9, so he's getting some volume. The air yards per game's not up there, but the volume of 7.8 targets per game, I don't really see that changing. ADOT might go a little bit deeper. We know Baker Mayfield loves to go YOLO. We know he loves to push it downfield. 25% share of the air yards because most of them go to Mike Evans. But a good target share. All right on the air yards per game. We have something here. But again, his contract says, hey, may not be with the Bucs forever, or it may just hash something out later. You never know. Age is not on his side when it comes to wide receivers. The wide receiver market's starting to get a little bit diluted. However, since he's Chris Godwin, since he's valued at wide receiver 41, the market's not too hot for him. You can probably catch him for cheaper and a bigger deal if you're moving some pieces around. And with these wide receivers, they're all productive. They're all getting workload. They're all getting opportunity. I'm talking about him, the two previous ones we talked about. They're all getting opportunity. Take the cheaper one. Get you a cheap veteran to add on the back end of your roster. If you feel like you can win some money this year, if you feel like you got a chance, get you a cheap veteran. See how cheap you can get them. Throw out some second-round picks, especially if you feel like they're going to be late. See if you can get a guy on the cheap. See if that can happen. Make them tell you no. Make people tell you no. Make them mad in the summer at the 4th of July party. Who cares about the other managers in your league anyway? Make them tell you no. Make them mad at their 4th of July party. Maybe even with Christian Kirk. Wide receiver 42. He can be very spiky. His down weeks aren't horrible. We're pushing 10 points a game on the down weeks. I'm looking at just the red candlesticks below me down there. On top of that, 7 targets per game, 20% target share. Should be somewhere around there this year. Roughly somewhere around there this year. Again, short targets, no deep balls really. It's not deep ball city with him, but 70 air yards per game. Pretty steady Eddie. That's why it's a little bit volatile when it comes to his production. 12.5 points per game, 12.4 with RotoViz. That being said, the market is right here. They're not over the moon anymore. It's kind of hiding under the radar because we have so many good rookies. Everybody's focused over here. One of these 4 veterans, if you feel like you can win some money, you might be able to catch them on the cheap. Again, just make people tell you no. Make somebody mad at the barbecue this weekend. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 43, paired with Bryce Young. Another veteran wide receiver that you might be able to catch on the cheap. He's looking good this offseason. He's looking good in minicamp. He's looking good in OTAs. He's building a rapport with Bryce Young. He's looking good in his workout clips. He's looking shifty. He's looking quick. I think the biggest negative to his game is the injuries throughout his career. Look at him last year with bad quarterback play. A lot of wide receiver 2 weeks, 1 wide receiver 1 week. Even when he was valued at his peak, when his ADP chart was at its highest, he was getting you a lot of wide receiver 2 games. He's very steady. He's being valued as like a wide receiver 4 in ADP or so. Deontay Johnson, if you can catch him on the cheap with this team, because a lot of people are down on the Panthers, expect him to get volume. Look at Adam Thielen's volume last year. He's going to steal some of that. He's going to get some of that. If he's healthy on the field, he's going to get some of that. A 23% target share at Pittsburgh, that's probably going to be the low in Carolina. Probably somewhere 25, 26, 27%. I look for him to be on the field. I look for him to at least have a 90% route participation rate. I look for that route participation rate to increase. ADOT should be roughly about the same somewhere. Maybe shorter, maybe bigger, maybe. But the volume, 6.8 targets per game, we might be pushing 7 to 8. That might increase a little bit. Maybe 8 targets a game. We might hit that. Deontay Johnson, if you can catch him at the cheap. I don't want him at wide receiver 43. I want my players cheaper than what they're listed. Calvin Ridley, too. Wide receiver 44, ADP 78. 7.9 targets per game. 22% target share. 102 air yards a game. Different team. But a quarterback that's a gunslinger who wants to put it downfield. Who does not care, who's throwing YOLO balls in Cabo to Calvin Ridley, and they're working on their chemistry. Will Levis does not care. He's a Honey Badger quarterback. Volume's going to go his way. Calvin Ridley creates separation, and he's going to have spike performances he did last year. What you see down here in the production, that's probably what you're going to get with Calvin Ridley. Maybe a little bit less spike weeks, but you're going to get some spike weeks and down weeks. It's probably what it's going to look like. It's probably going to be a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. Do you want that? Do you want that? It's probably what it's going to look like. He's probably going to get volume. It's probably going to be some deep targets. And it's going to be splashy. It's going to be splashy. It's going to be up and down. It'll be a roller coaster all year. ADOT's probably going to be good. He had a good ADOT last year. That is telling me Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be getting some deep balls there in Jacksonville. They wanted a wide receiver that can get deep balls. They got Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas Jr., Calvin Ridley got a good ADOT. He's going to get a good ADOT with Will Levis. Will Levis loves to push it downfield. He does not care. Calvin Ridley, if you can catch him cheap. Again, we're looking at these veterans. Just start trying to get them on the low. Make some people mad at you. If you get one, you get one. If not, at least you made somebody mad, because Jameson Williams is at wide receiver 45, almost an ADP of 80, 3.4 targets per game. But the story behind him is the Detroit Lions did not bring any wide receivers of consequence. But the consequence of that narrative, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 25 to 30+% target share. Sam Laporta, easy 20+% target share. There's 50+% of the targets zapped to 2 wide receivers. You got a running back that catches passes out of the backfield. You got the other ancillary wide receivers. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's sneaky. You got Jameson Williams. What do I think about him? I think about him in the same light as I've always thought about him. I think about him as a Will Fuller type wide receiver. His career arc's kind of similar, kind of getting there. Now we just got to get that splash season where he reels in some deep balls, gets you some wide receiver 1 weeks with a lot of really bad wide receiver 3 weeks to really hone that in. But he's a deep ball specialist. Great for best ball, but you already know that. But he's a guy on your roster you throw in your lineup. You pray to God it's the splash week. You just pray, and then it either happens or it doesn't. And that's it. You either want it or you don't. Maybe he turns it around. Maybe he doesn't. But we know what Jameson Williams is. We know what the range of outcomes are. I would try and get him a little bit cheaper. Marquise Brown, wide receiver 46. I do not know why the market is not all in right now. The market's starting to pump back up. If you see that on the ADP chart, it's starting to pump back up. I don't think he's liquid on the market. I don't think anybody's selling him on the cheap. But again, his contract's not for long. You might be able to buy him on the cheap, though, at a good price, though. Maybe at wide receiver 46 range, somewhere like that. Due to him not being a young wide receiver, maybe someone trying to cash out due to him being on the Chiefs, maybe you can catch on that. But I look for him to get good volume in this offense. I look for them to try to push it downfield. They added speed to this team, him and Xavier Worthy. There's a reason for that. They were playing small ball last year. That 11.9 ADOT could bump up to 12 to 13. 7 targets a game. That's very doable on this team. Marquise Hollywood Brown's going to get some volume. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be getting a lot of opportunity. I look for him to hover around like an 87% route participation rate, maybe 90-ish. 99, 95. That's probably going to be hard for him to hit, but maybe not. Maybe not. But that being said, I like Marquise Brown. I like the value here. I just don't think it's real value. I just don't think it's liquid. I think people are just going to stand still. And I think startup drafts are different because you look at him, you see 1-year contract, possible out in 2025, possibly with another team next year. Who knows? He has a good year. He's probably going to get re-signed. Considering what the Chiefs had at wide receiver last year, look at it that way. Look at the rosy colored glasses. Look at the ugly glasses that you don't want to wear. Look at it all. Look at it all. Because Keenan Allen, his injury bug, those ugly glasses. But the rosy colored glasses here, 11.5 targets per game, 32% target share. Probably not getting that in Chicago, but maybe. But maybe. You got DJ Moore there. We got Caleb Williams, who are ramping up. We got Rome Odunze, who will be on the field this year. He will be on the field this year. 11.5 targets per game, 32% target share. That's hard to do, but he might get spam targets. There are some games last year where he got spam targets. I always reference the Minnesota game when I'm talking about the Chargers and Justin Herbert, when I'm going over those minicamp clips. But look at that Minnesota game where he scored 46 PPR fantasy points. He's got a lot of upside still in him. He's got spike weeks still in him. His down games aren't bad. I look for him to get spammed a little bit if Caleb Williams is looking like a good rookie. If he looks like an okay rookie, I look for Keenan to get spammed a little bit. maybe 8 to 9 targets per game, maybe that, maybe more like a 22 to 25% target share. Maybe you're okay with that for a year or two, maybe. Wide receiver 47 right now in ADP. We're still under the 100 ADP threshold with him being an older wide receiver with an injury history. You may not want that. I only want him on win now teams, honestly. If I'm in a rebuild, if I got a new team, I don't really want to build around him unless I'm really good and I just want something solid for the now so I can win some money this year. And we're all about winning money. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 51, ADP 109. Notice the wide receiver 51 jumped up a bit because we're skipping the rookies today, because the rookies, we've talked about them way too much this offseason. You need to know about your vets. But this is a wild card spot. Bo Nix, Zach Wilson. I expect some ramp up here. I expect this to be a slower volume offense. I expect this offense to be a little dirty. I expect these games to be a little dirty and wonky. 5.7 targets per game, 20% target share. When you look at it that way, when you look at the quarterback situation last year, we saw how bad it could get. We've seen it, and he could still be productive. Wide receiver 51. How many more wide receivers on the board would you rather have over him? Would you rather just start shooting your shot on speculative young guys at this point? Let me know in the comments. Speculative running backs, or get this wide receiver, have him as your wide receiver 4, 5, 6, however you built. However you're at in your position right now on your team. Because you could be in a startup draft. You could be just trading for pieces to get that back end of your roster ready for 2024. Whatever you're doing. What are you doing with Cortland Sutton? For me, I'm not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. But if I'm looking for something cheap, if I'm trying to win this year, sure. I don't really recommend it, though. I don't recommend it. But again, it could be something like he gets you about 11, 12 points per game, maybe 10 points per game, have a couple spike weeks, and that might get it done for you in certain situations. Honestly, in fantasy, you may want to look at him more of a buy-in season. I imagine he's going to be cheap nonetheless. Maybe if you're starting to get targets week 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe you buy him in season. If you're a win now team, you're undefeated, you're looking for some extra pieces, maybe that's a smarter move to get Cortland Sutton because he is getting volume. He should get volume in this offense. He should be one of the main wide receivers. He might get peppered if he's getting peppered in certain situations, especially when Denver's down. They're trying to come back. They're letting their young quarterbacks play. Maybe Cortland Sutton down the line somewhere for the right fantasy team, for the right one, can deliver some production. But it has to be the right one because most fantasy teams probably out on this. But a lot of fantasy teams, like a few of them in each league, are probably in. Let me know where you're at with Cortland Sutton, where you're at in that regards. But the other wide receivers on this list too, going down ADP, you might be down with them. Let me know. Want to hear about that. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.